I want to talk about superstar Billy Graham, who passed away this week, very tragically. And it's crazy because the man has been on the edge for quite some time when it comes to passing away. He has almost died numerous times in the past 20 years. He's had problems with all kinds of different organs. He's been on the brink of death multiple times. And it almost became like an ongoing thing where we started to wonder like when this dude was going to go. Not to say that I wanted him to go, but it was just every year there was at least one story about how superstar Billy Graham was close to passing away. And he eventually did. It's unfortunate. The guy's a legitimate legend. I want to talk about him because I don't think people really understand how inspirational this guy was to the modern era, not just for professional wrestling, but also mixed martial arts. First of all, before Jesse Ventura, before Scott Steiner, before Hulk Hogan, this man, superstar Billy Graham, was the absolute ripped, jive talking, muscular superstar. Really, the first guy to call himself a superstar officially before the term WWF or WWE superstar became a thing. Billy Graham said it first. WWE had a beautiful documentary come out in the 2000s called 20 Years Too Soon, the Superstar Billy Graham story. And I remember buying the DVD, and I think it's still on Peacock/, WWE Network. So I wanted everybody to watch it because it's a tremendous story. It warns about the dangers of steroid use because that's one of the big stories there about how steroids destroyed his body. But it also talks about the good, which was, of course, what he did for the wrestling business. Hulk Hogan, I mentioned. Before Hulk Hogan called his biceps pythons, superstar Billy Graham did first. Before Scott Steiner did Scott Steiner math, superstar Billy Graham rapped some math lyrics. Look up Superstar Billy Graham promo online, and you will find so many things that this man said. He was like the first real talker of the wrestling business. Maybe not the first ever, because obviously Gorgeous George Wagner predated him many decades. Well, not many decades, but a couple decades prior. But he was the first guy to really add like that smooth soul to it. Dusty Rhodes, obviously Jerry Lawler, Muhammad Ali, all great talkers of like the 60s and 70s. But Billy Graham was just at a top level. In fact, the current storyline going on right now in WWE where Cody Rhodes wants to win the title that Dusty Rhodes held up in the Garden, well, Dusty Rhodes held up the title in the Garden, but he won the match via countout, I believe it was. I think it was either countout or disqualification, and the champion was superstar Billy Graham. Dusty Rhodes and Billy Graham had a legendary trilogy of matches in Madison Square Garden. They had a Texas Bull Rope match that's just legendary, especially for its time. They were doing all that stuff that Jon Moxley does now. They were doing that in the Garden back then. Just a tremendous grudge match, a tremendous feud. One of the great feuds of the 70s. But Billy Graham did not just inspire wrestling, he inspired MMA, specifically Chael Sonnen. I remember one time on Twitter I was saying I lift barbell plates, I eat T-bone steaks, I'm sweeter than a German chocolate cake. And somebody's like, Chael Sonnen. No, that's not Chael Sonnen, my friend. That's superstar Billy Graham. Chael Sonnen stole his entire shtick from 2011 when he feuded with Anderson Silva from superstar Billy Graham. All of it. I'm the ladies' pet, the men's regret. What you see is what you get, and what you don't see is better yet. All those rhymes were superstar Billy Graham. So for many years, and I still feel this way, people would have debates about who was the best talker in wrestling. Is it The Rock? Certainly in the top 10. Is it Steve Austin? Certainly in the top 10. Ric Flair? Easily in the top 10. Jerry Lawler? The great all-time talkers. King Curtis Iake is another one. There's just so many guys who cut phenomenal promos. Roddy Piper, even Hulk Hogan. And my pick was always superstar Billy Graham. I felt like Superstar Billy Graham and Dusty Rhodes were like polar opposites. They were like two peas of the same pod, but one was a babyface, one was a heel. Dusty knew how to. It's an art that's kind of lost in wrestling. MJF's one of the few guys that has it, at least from the heel side. But Dusty knew how to grab the audience. Same thing with Piper, another guy. They knew how to grab the audience by the throat through the television and captivate their hearts. And because of their tremendous talking, sold a lot of tickets and made themselves very wealthy athletes. Superstar Billy Graham was the same thing, but on the heel side. Superstar Billy Graham was cocky, arrogant, completely shredded. He was an absolute monster. And remember, he was a monster in the WWF before it became, really infested with steroids. The steroid stuff really got bad in the 80s. But prior to the 80s, you had guys like Superstar Billy Graham and even Superfly Jimmy Snuka that were completely shredded and obviously gassed up. Obviously, there have been guys on roids for quite some time. In the 80s, where it got really over the top. But Billy Graham was the first guy whose body was just like, you look at the guy, it's marvelous. I mean, his upper body looks more impressive than Hulk Hogan in his prime. And both these guys were monsters. Superstar Billy Graham also had a beard that he dyed. He had like the kind of almost like the Fu Manchu, like what Hulk Hogan had with the beard. And it's pretty freaking amazing that Hulk Hogan kind of took so much from this man, except on the babyface side. And I really like how the documentary, you got to check out the documentary, man, how they talk about his, how Jesus Christ inspired his life. He got his name from Billy Graham the Preacher. I mean, his real name's not Billy Graham. But it's interesting how his religion really saved him, as did his wife. It's a great story. And even though it has a happy ending, the documentary does, the unfortunate thing is that throughout the years, Superstar Billy Graham has had a real, he's had a real on and off relationship with WWE. Him and Vince McMahon have not seen eye to eye. And I believe this was one of the times when they were not getting along. And I believe that at one point Billy Graham sold his Hall of Fame ring and that he got in 2004. And it just got real nasty and real ugly. And it's unfortunate, but I do think that now that he's gone, I'm glad that him and Vince were able to resolve at least some of their issues. Some. But now that he's gone, I think the WWE will still honor him, and I think they should because, like the documentary said, he really was 20 years too soon. Billy Graham would have fit in any era. Rock and wrestling era, I mean, he was there. He was managing Magnificent Morocco during a lot of that time. The Rock Don Morocco. He was managing him then, and then in the Attitude Era, he would have fit right in. He was an over-the-top character. Great heel. Would have been a great heel. Ruthless Aggression Era, same thing. I mean, he looked, if you ever play Punch-Out and you look at the body of like Super Macho Man with that insane like V-taper where it's like his waist is thin and jacked, but he's got the big shoulders and big arms, that's Billy Graham. Anyone would kill to have a body like that. But he wasn't just a bodybuilder. He wasn't the best, most technical wrestler ever, but he was the character. He was a talker, and he drew money. And he was the WWF champion for 1 year. 1 year. He beat Bruno Sammartino, ending his legendary reign, and then lost to Bob Backlund, starting his. Vince Sr. knew exactly when, and this is crazy, he knew exactly when Graham was going to win and lose the title. But he had a hell of a year to the point where there was consideration and talk that maybe he should have been champion longer. Obviously, WWE is a babyface territory. They really focus on good guys, like your Hulk Hogan's and John Cena's, even though right now Roman Reigns is, total opposite of that. Still, Billy Graham was one of the few guys. I think, he was actually the first guy to get a long 1 year title reign as a heel. Because he was just that damn talented and drew that many tickets. and he will be missed. I unfortunately never got to meet the guy. I respect his accomplishments. Obviously, he was kind of grouchy in the last few years of his life, but that happens to a lot of old people, and we can't forget who they were. So those are my thoughts on superstar Billy Graham. Right now, go to the search bar on YouTube and type in superstar Billy Graham promo and just watch everything. Because if you haven't seen it, when you see it, you'll understand. Take care.